Paducah to Crossville and everywhere in between. So when I told him, Bishop, I'm ready to make a change this year, and he accepted that, I could have gone from Paducah first to Crossville first to up to Clarksville to Savannah and anywhere in between. And part of my ordination vow as a Methodist pastor is, Bishop, I'll go where you send me. We call it a sent ministry. So.
Now, I know the bishop was in a car accident a couple of weeks ago. Do you hear any updates on Bishop McAlilly?
Yeah, he's had surgery a few times on ankles and legs. Doctors gave him a good prognosis from what we've been told, and he's got 12 long, hard weeks of recovery, kind of in the short term. And but things are looking bright and looking up, and his family is incredibly appreciative of the prayers. I know I've asked for prayers from the community for him, and because we're a global church, he's had bishops and friends and missionaries from all over the world writing to him, wishing him well, and so that's one of the beautiful things about our denomination.
Now, when we use the term United Methodist, and I'm going to, get to my question here in this roundabout way, but as we travel the countryside, we may see, like a sign that says General Baptist Church, Independent Baptist Church, Southern Baptist Church, and I use that all respectful. I'm saying that very respectful, to all these other congregations. But are there other congregations of Methodists out there in the United States or in the world beyond just a United Methodist?
Yeah, so we've got a fairly wide family tree. We don't need a full history lesson, but you've got United Methodists, you've got Free Methodists out there. Depending on the age of the church, you may see a Methodist Episcopal Church. Those are kind of dated back from, say, the early 1900s. We've got, within the Methodist family tree, the John Wesley family tree, you've got Wesleyan churches, Nazarene churches, kind of all in the same ballpark. And here recently, it's probably no surprise to our listeners this morning, the United Methodist Church has had some strife, and we're trying to figure out how best to serve our communities. And so the Global Methodist Church is, you may see more of those names either in the news or out in the community as we figure out kind of what a local church, how it wants to affiliate with a denomination. We're having some splintering at the moment. So that's kind of high in the news.
Why do things, you term of splintering, why do these things happen as time evolves? And this is not the first time in history that, a denomination has gone through splintering processes. And what United Methodists are dealing with right now, other denominations are dealing with issues too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, these things, they come and go. Any church historian would watch the branches of the tree expand and then come back together. The United Methodist Church has done that. We've got that in our own history. Sometimes it reflects what's going on in the United States with partisan politics, kind of some deep divisions that we have in national government. We see that in the church, and so that sometimes that doesn't help things at all. Sometimes we have theological differences over. It could be salvation, it could be sexuality, it could be the way the church interacts in culture, all these things. It only takes a little bit to kind of create a divide or a deep wedge. Some churches kind of want to be more local in the way they govern themselves and not have a global structure that they're part of. And so, yeah, any one of those things is contributing to the fracturing, the dividing, and the splintering. And so, yeah, we're seeing that. It's high in the news, and that's unfortunate. I think United Methodists are known for that at the moment.
Well, let's get back to things at Camden First United Methodist Church right now. Where does this local congregation or any United Methodist Church here in Benton County or surrounding counties, where do they fit into the overall structure of United Methodism as we know it today?
Yeah, right. So Camden First, church has been down on the square for quite some time, and we're not going anywhere. We'll be United Methodist through and through for till Christ comes back, is how I'd say it. And We are part of the Tennessee Western Kentucky Conference. We're part of the Tennessee River District, which is a little bit of a larger geographic area. And Bishop McAlilly oversees us, and we're part of the Southeastern jurisdiction. So you can just think that you go from the local congregation to a regional area to a kind of state level, and then when you put all the states together, it's a jurisdiction. So there are 5 jurisdictions in the United States. And the southeastern one goes from Virginia to the Mississippi River to the Gulf and gets that kind of deep south part of the United States. And there's no one bishop that oversees that area. It's a group of them. And then outside of the United States, we have central conferences. And if you take the Tennessee Western Kentucky Conference, all the other conferences in the United States, all the ones outside of the United States globally, especially in Africa, in the Philippines, and Southeast Asia, we've got a really strong presence. That's your global church. And when we have to do our business every 4 years, it's called General Conference. And we have both clergy, we have pastors and church members who are representatives from those conferences all go together, and it's like the United Nations for about 2 or 3 weeks, and they write the rules for the church.
Now, because of the pandemic, has not the General Conference, has it not had to postpone their meetings for the last couple of years?
Yeah, right. So they've been on a 4-year cycle for, back to the early 1800s or late 1700s. It's been every 4 years or so. And COVID messed it up big time. They met in 2019. But when we've got global delegates, vaccines have been an issue, travel restrictions to and from different countries have been challenging, visa applications. We were told some delegates were having to wait hundreds of days for visa applications, and COVID vaccines and getting tested before flights. We made a really good call globally and said, look, we're not going to try and pull this off right now. We need to wait. It's not fair for a conference to be in the United States and not have African delegates. That's kind of colonial not to have them at the table with equal representation, just because they can't travel or couldn't get COVID vaccines. So we got to wait it out a few years, and we'll be back on in 2024, it looks like.
Again, let's bring it down a little bit to the more local level at Camden First United Methodist Church, and it's always been a thriving church up here ever since I was a little boy. Do you know how far back the history goes up here with this? I know you're brand new, I understand that.
Yeah, right. There are folks in this community that know much better than me. I know that there's a plaque on the wall with pastors listed. That plaque goes back to the 1900s, but we've got more history before that. I don't want to throw a date out because somebody's going to call me up later and tell me that I'm wrong about it. But I'd put it probably 150, 175 years at least.
Okay. What about membership? What is your membership right now, thereabouts?
Yeah, membership and those who are active in attendance are like 2 wildly different numbers. Here since, I guess in the last 8 weeks, we've been worshiping about 120. We keep attendance for both in person and online. We have folks that might be either homebound or immunocompromised, and they're active members of the church. They're checking us out on Facebook Live on Sunday morning, so they're part of the body. And so we've got a good clip going on this summer. We got first-time visitors through the door, and I'm excited. We've got some folks who are going to be joining. The first one, September 18th, I think. So yeah, it seems like we're off to a good start this summer.
Now, before you got here with us about 8 weeks ago, and of course we're still dealing with the pandemic, but did that affect your ministry? It did in your previous assignments, and all churches of all denominations, they were affected. So how did you adjust, and how did you keep on doing the things you had to do in previous assignments as a minister during the pandemic?
Yeah, the previous church I was serving, I was the senior pastor of a church that worshiped about 400 in Williamson County, and the very first, I just saw an email about this the other day, just looking through some old stuff. It was about March 6th or 13th in there, and our bishop said, along with many bishops in the country, hey, we're going to suspend worship in person for about the next 4 weeks and see how this thing unfolds. we ended up being online only from late March of 2020 all the way until August. And we had the technological capabilities already, so we were blessed in that way. I know so many churches were trying to play catch up to get cameras and microphones and get online in a short period of time. In August, we went back, and there was a grove of kind of hardwood trees out on the front lawn of the church, and so we called it Worship in the Grove, and so we had worship out under the trees on Sunday nights when the sun was going down, and I mean it was a good thing, and it was well received. So many people had been apart for so long. We stayed outside for about August through October, and there was a short window when we were back in our sanctuary from November until about mid-December. And in the area in Williamson County, the cases went just absolutely nuts right at Christmas. Some folks might remember Governor Lee asking us to be a part at Christmas that year. And then I think about January, we came back when things eased up, and we had distancing requirements. We limited the capacity in the sanctuary. Probably since January of 2021, things took a slow creep back to what we call a new normal. But it was hard. I mean, for 2 years, there were a lot of folks in hospitals, assisted living facilities that I did not go see, that certainly could have used a pastoral visit. But I told my family, I said, my community exposure was huge. I was with folks every single Sunday. My daughter was in preschool. My wife works in a hospital, and it would have torn my heart to pieces to go visit a church member who was lonely or despairing or isolated. And if I was sick, I would not have known where I got it from, and I did not want to take that to folks. And folks understood that. I had a multi-staff, and so I had folks around me as far as colleagues to work with. So many pastors, and this is especially for medium membership churches and smaller, they're preaching, they're doing pastoral care, they're trying to do Zoom meetings and Zoom Bible studies and be videographers. I mean, they had a hard slog. And so if that's your pastor who was serving that way, or maybe that's you, I thank you for serving in that way, because it was a long, hard haul for folks doing a solo job.
Well, since you've been here, I have already run into you in a number of different places. Saw you at the swearing in up at the courthouse this past Thursday. Saw you down at the fair a few days ago. And you are making an impact early. You're wanting to get out into the community. Why is it important for a local minister to get out into the community and to, reach out beyond than just what you're doing on Sunday mornings?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this size community, being seen, being known, meeting folks, having good relationships with law enforcement and elected officials and business owners I think that's why I'm here. I think that's why the church is here, to serve and love on this community and be of aid, be collaborative partners in ministry and community life. And now that I'm the new guy in town, I've got a part in that. And everywhere I go, and I meet somebody new, I find out they're only kind of 2 degrees of connection distance from somebody I might worship with or somebody else I've met in the community. So it's like taking little puzzle pieces and putting them together and getting a fuller spread of what's going on here in Benton County.
You've probably already met, from where you come from in Williamson County, you've already probably met some connections here, that new mutual friends up there. I'm sure that's
Right.
happened.
Right, that absolutely. It goes both ways. I've got some church members out of Williamson that they've got lake houses over at Birdsong, and so they were able to say great things about Camden when I was coming here, and where I should go eat and who I should go meet. And I've got church members here that have adult children and grandchildren living in the mid-state, and so we've crossed paths in I'd say in a prior life. So yeah, it's great to rediscover these connections that are there.
Well, I tell you, we're about halfway through the program. I can't believe it, how time is slipping away from us. We're having a great conversation this morning, but it's time to have a break right now and a message from our other friends that make possible this program each and every Saturday morning. So a message right now from our friends at Apex Bank, and we'll be back with more on Operation 7570. Stay tuned.
Apex Bank of Camden, proudly serving the Benton County community since 1931. In recent years, through growth and expansion, we've taken that same local community spirit into other markets. Today, with over 20,000 customers across Tennessee, our business philosophy remains the same. Local people making local decisions, serving our friends and customers, and investing in the communities that we serve. Here for you yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Apex Bank of Camden, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
We're back this morning on Operation 7570. Our guest live in the studio with us on this Saturday morning, Adam Kelchner. He is the new minister at First United Methodist Church in Camden. Before the break, we were talking about you being so visible out in the community in just a short time you've been with us. And at the same time, that reminds me of outreach programs. So as time goes along, do you expect your church, and they're already very much involved with outreach, but would you like to expand on that and do other things out in the community?
Yeah, this church has such a rich history of supporting Second Harvest, the West Tennessee Distribution Center. Christ Cafe is happening every Thursday. So many know the thrift store is there on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and the women of the church and other local churches supporting that, making it possible. Just so much ministry already taking place. I've told our folks that I want to take some time to learn the church, learn how it's been serving, learn the community, and be visible and figure out, hey, what are the needs of hurting people in this area? I didn't want to come in on day one and say, hey, this is how we're going to do it. Like, I don't know what's what. So I'm in a season of learning and watching and observing and figuring out, hey, as we come off COVID, what are the needs to serve the folks here and be present in the community. So yeah, we'll see what that road looks like.
You mentioned Second Harvest and the fine work Donna Vick and all her staff does out there, but can you explain a little bit more about Christ Cafe and what that is on Thursdays that takes place at First United Methodist Church?
Yeah, Christ Cafe is it's a hot cooked meal on Thursday afternoons. Typically, we serve at 5 o'clock. I know folks, we've been serving a little early here in the past few weeks, but it's anybody in the community that needs food. You don't have to show ID or registration or verify address, nothing like that. If you're a person who needs food, come on to Camden First at the Methodist Church, and there'll be a line in the parking lot of cars, and we serve it to go. And that starts probably about, I'd say, 4:15. So if you're a hungry, hurting person, come and we serve food until we're out.
And I know in the past, you mentioned Second Harvest, as we said, and I know in the past on Saturday morning, at some point in the year, there have been drop-offs, food drop-offs at First United Methodist Church parking lot, drive-through for the folks to come in, and I feel sure you'll have another one of those before long.
Absolutely. I've promised that with Donna that we'll look at the calendar and figure out a day and a time to have another mobile food drop there at the church. I don't know when exactly that'll be, but it's a vital ministry that needs to happen, and we're good for it.
Now, I know right after school got out around the end of May, first week in June, you were still not with us, but you're familiar with it. Dayshore, an outreach of Lakeshore. Dayshore took place for those 4 or 5 days, and that was a great experience. And do you think things like that will continue?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Gary Lawson and the camp staff at Lakeshore. Y'all do a tremendous job, and we're thankful that they're one of our ministry partners. They are one of 3 Methodist camps, assembly centers for the Tennessee Western Kentucky Conference, and they do amazing ministry. They're known far and wide, and I want to continue to cultivate that relationship. I mean, how wonderful is it that we've got that assembly center like 8 miles up the road? It's such a beautiful facility, and I'm thankful for their overnight camp offerings, and then that they're serving in West Tennessee. I was in Jackson one day, and they were doing a dayshore camp for young people at Jackson First at the Methodist Church downtown. So, yeah, I look forward to the ways we can support Lakeshore and I think Dayshore is going to be on the books again. I see no reason why it wouldn't be.
Now, Lakeshore, it has a great history in Benton County as well, right close to 80 years, I believe. I could be off a year or two, but it's been serving the needs here on Kentucky Lake for youth. It originally started out, I think, serving the Memphis Conference, of course, you know now, but I think, kids come from in Middle Tennessee to see what's going on down there.
Oh, absolutely, man. I I had so many congregants in the Mid-State that their experience in faith began at Lakeshore. I mean, they had the local church, but the way they really got formed in faith and some of their best memories of praise and worship and small groups and outreach, it's from camp. And so, I mean, every single summer they could come back. They looked forward to it. They went from little campers to counselors to camp staff, and some have stayed and worked. And so, yeah, it's got a special place in their heart.
We've talked about some things involving the United Methodist Church on a higher scale beyond Camden, of course. And does the church, does it offer like counseling, or is there a United Methodist Church presence on college campuses, for young people?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are several colleges across the country that have relationships with the conference that they are in. Randolph-Macon College, the one I went to in Virginia, has a formal relationship with the conference. But there are other colleges, universities, think of UT, Belmont University, Vanderbilt, that are kind of your either your public or private schools that are not formally Methodist, but they do have Methodist ministries available to their enrolled students. And so I was able to serve as a campus minister at Belmont University probably back around 2011 to about 14. And Belmont University, with a Baptist history for a while, as they were expanding their scope of horizons, they came and said, "Hey, we've got all these Methodist students, like, will y'all come serve them?" And we said, "Yeah, we'd be happy to do that." And so I planted a campus ministry at Belmont, and then a West Tennessee pastor, Reverend David Hollis, who's got some roots in this area, he came and has grown that to its next level. And it makes my heart sing that we've got students who graduated from Camden High School out of Benton County, who went to Belmont and got engaged in that campus ministry. And so, it's these tight connections. I love it.
And I'm sure you've met her already. Allie Webb is up there right now, as a matter of fact. In her senior year, she's going to be in another attorney.
That's right. And Macy Hudson's up there as well.
Right.
The two of them just saw pictures of their first day at law school, or their first day of this year.
And I think over here, housing, assisted living over here, I think Good Samaritan is affiliated with Wesley Housing, or whatever it's called now, out of Memphis.
Yeah, that's been Wesley Senior Ministries, Wesley Living was a part of the Memphis Conference prior to our merger to be the Tennessee Western Kentucky. So there are facilities all across the western part of the state, still part of the conference. And I serve as a chaplain there. And it's a great opportunity that I get to represent both Camden First and serve the spiritual needs of the residents there. Just yesterday, Brad Mills and I were helping a new resident get settled in, and so we were dropping some furniture off, and some things had been provided by the church. And so I'm thankful for their generosity and our ability to get a neighbor settled in. I think that's the church at its finest.
Have you had at this point in your early ministry here in Camden, and beyond things you do on Sundays and your normal week, but have you had to deal with situations whereby, maybe a stranded traveler might come in, or, somebody needing assistance down on their luck? Have you had to deal with those type? Don't want to get,
Yeah.
privacy, I understand that, but you have those type of things. And how do you handle that?
Yeah. Most of the needs that have come our way in the last 2 months have been with food insecurity, and so we've got food boxes that we can send with people and help get them by for a few more days. I've learned that the Ministerial Alliance, when I believe your electric bill gets rounded up a few pennies or so, and they're able to help with electric bills. I have not so far not gotten a lot of those benevolent requests. That has certainly been a part of my ministry for the past 10 years, and I'm really thankful for folks in the church that know that that is a need, and they usually make special gifts and say, hey, pastor, here's a here are funds, and when somebody's got a broken down car, needs a new battery, about to be evicted for rent, I mean, all sorts of stuff, the things that can disrupt life, would you help them out, get them on their way? And we're able to do that because of the generosity in the local church.
I think you said at the beginning of the program you had a calling for the ministry at a very young age. Did you ever consider any other occupation at that time? Or?
Yeah, one other. There were, I'd say there were two tracks. Call to ministry was pretty clear about, say, age 12, 13, which is probably unusual. And that was on one hand, and as I was getting older, I had a love for like classical music. At the time, I could play piano and clarinet, a little bit of saxophone, learn the oboe later on, and I loved symphonic orchestral conducting, and had aspirations to go to a music conservatory and do symphonic conducting. But at the same time, I knew I had this call to ministry, and I'd heard so many older Methodist preachers say, I had this calling, I went and did something else, and then it caught up with me 30 years later. And I thought to myself, that is really inefficient. I've got this calling now, we're gonna go straight. And so I set the music conservatory thing aside, and it was a one-track mind for ministry and the education to do that.
Well, I know in those early years where you were setting the course to get into the ministry, you had to have some great mentors and influences and people that gave you encouragement along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, for one, that the late Reverend William Mahan was the one that I put it on him. He made an invitation for me as a child to help lead worship with him, and that was it. That's where that started. Another one, Reverend Jason Stanley. He still serves in Virginia. He was pretty instrumental in getting me to Randolph-Macon. He had been a student there, and he pointed me in the right direction at the time, so I'm thankful for his ministry. The one in Tennessee is the Reverend Ken Edwards. He's retired, but after about 40 years of ministry, he was my senior pastor very early on. He led the service for me and my wife when we got married. My colleagues used to say I was more like his fourth son than his associate pastor, so I'm deeply grateful for his wise counsel along the way, and friendship. And there are so many others. They're Methodist pastors that have been helpful all the way.
Yeah, and I know sometimes, you minister to the needs. You've seen people who need your counseling, whether they're going through bereavement or down on their luck for some reason. You do that, you minister to them, and they need someone to share things with in private. We know that. But at the same time, I'm sure, ministers sometimes need help as well. And I was going to ask you, where do ministers turn to when they need some more guidance and some more uplifting?
So that's why I fish all the time, right? Ministers absolutely need to help set that model for Sabbath rest. We're usually serving on Sundays, but there's got to be a day in there that is to rest, to relax, to draw from a deep well. I would say that, like Reverend Edwards and others that are wise counsel for me, I mean, they're a text, a phone call away, and what I'm going through, they've probably seen it at some point in ministry, so they don't get too terribly concerned. They can hear me share about it. I've got Methodist colleagues serving all across the country, actually globally, that nothing more than a Facebook message away. We went to school together, and we catch up, and we go back and forth on the hard, heavy things that we're sharing. I've got a spiritual director that we meet monthly, and he's in Colorado Springs, and we were doing Zoom before it was cool. We've done the spiritual direction relationship for 12 years, and he and I have never been in the same room together. But when I'm trying to sense where a thin place is between heaven and earth in my own life, it's this guy. It's Todd Spencer. I would trust him with the heaviest stuff in the world. COVID and ministry and just the the life that we live, serving all the time, any of the helping professions know this. You've got to tend to mental health care, to your own spirit, to your own health. You can get isolated, and we deal with some of the heaviest stuff in people's lives. And so having counsel and friends and a community of support around is absolutely key, and the past 2 years have made that all the more clear.
There could possibly be a young man or a young lady out there that may be considering an occupation in the ministry, maybe not so much in the pulpit,
Yeah.
but with counseling or, but, sharing with others and counseling, whatever they want to go into. So what would be your advice maybe if there's an inspiring young man or young lady out there that would like to someday venture into the ministry?
Yeah, if you feel like God's Spirit is making it clear that most of your life's work is going to be serving hurting, despairing people because of the good news that we have in Jesus Christ, then I would say you got to tell somebody about it. It's not crazy. You may have an adopted grandmother or grandfather at church. Go tell them. If you trust them, tell your parents, tell your pastor, tell your youth pastor, whoever it is that's a spiritual mentor in your life. And if you think you're called, if you sense that, don't do anything else with your life. You will not be fulfilled and satisfied and find the great meaning in your life's work. If you are called, go do the ministry you're called to. If you're not called, don't try and get into the ministry because it's a grinder. If you know you're called, pursue it, but don't get into it. There's no fame, there's no fortune, there are easier ways to make a living. But if you are called, don't run from it. I'll tell you, it's inefficient. Do it the straight way the first time.
Well, here we are, the 1st of September. Is it going to be a busy fall leading up to the holiday season for the fine people at First United Methodist? Already is.
Hey, don't tell me, don't remind me about Advent. I've got a few more months. But yeah, just this upcoming week, we're going to shift our age level programming. So we're bringing children's ministry and youth ministry and some adult study and choir. We're bringing that all on Wednesdays. We've done some of it on Wednesdays, some of it on Sundays. So we're going to line it all up. Wednesday nights, choir rehearsal. We're going to have some congregational meals in October. And so we're just trying to kickstart kind of being a part during the worst of the COVID pandemic and get back into that kind of Sunday, Wednesday rhythm that so many folks know as church life.
If people are out there looking for a church home, I'm sure you would welcome them anytime
Absolutely.
up at First United Methodist Church. So tell me when your services are.
Yeah, you come see us at, if you want to be in person, it's 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. Church is right off the square on Lake Street, and we'd love to have you, anybody and everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. Come worship with us. If you want to check us out online first, we're on Facebook, Camden First UMC. Our Facebook page is the best way to find us there. You can even go back, watch some videos from previous services, see what the music's like, see what my preaching's like. But we'd love to have you anytime. And if you want to come see the preacher first before service, you just call the church office and we can set up a time. I'd be happy to meet you.
And the broadcast is right up here each and every Sunday morning. Luke Crutchfield running our board today. He is sure that you and the fine folks up there on every Sunday morning at 10 a.m.
Yeah, I appreciate your help. For a while, I didn't even know we were on the radio, and somebody said, "Preacher, we got to get out by 11. You know they cut you off on the radio." And I said, "Well, I wish I had known that the first week."
As we close this morning, Adam, and I don't do this usually with my guests, but I would like for you, first of all, maybe on this Labor Day weekend, as we get ready for the fall, leave us with a positive message, if you will, and then just close us out with a word of prayer, if you will, my friend.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
All
I'd be
right.
happy to. Hey, we live in a great community. We've got a great country, and especially on Labor Day, we remember those who toil with their hands, those who have made workplaces safer and given us better work weeks. It preserves our health and our happiness and our wholeness. And so remember that as we spend some time with family and friends and recreate on Labor Day, that's a bit of the origin of that holiday. And would you join me in a word of prayer? God of grace, we pray a blessing this morning on those who are listening. As the dawn rises, we know your love is at work all the day long in the world. So wherever we go, would your Spirit go ahead of us to bless us, to pave the way, to make the rough patches in the road smooth, and make the low places in the road level for us as we journey with one another. And we give thanks for your love and for your grace, and we pray for this in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, sir, for being here, my friend. We'll have you back on down the road.
Hey,
I promise you that.
That sounds like a deal. I
Just got
appreciate
to
it.
chastise you. You know, I saw you up there mixing and mingling the other day, socializing with Brother Doyle Williams from Tennessee River Baptist, Kenville out at Shiloh, and Cow's Chapel. You got to be careful now, those fellas. My goodness.
You know, it's hey, preachers, we're special crop, cut from a different cloth. But I look forward to meeting the rest of the clergy in the area.
We love those gentlemen so very much and all they do. And by the way, Ken up at Shiloh next Saturday afternoon is going to have a big fish fry up there. So you need to try to make that if you possibly can. That'll be wonderful. It always is.
Fried catfish is always a win.
Absolutely. Brother Adam Kelchner, our guest this morning, ladies and gentlemen, on Operation 7570. Thank you, sir, for being in our studios. Thank you for listening with us this morning, watching by way of Facebook. Hope you have a great, safe, happy Labor Day weekend. We'll see you next Saturday morning. Have a great weekend.